Cheryl with the Palo Alto Network's Live Community, and I have with me today Brandon Pry. Brandon is a senior network security engineer for the Wisconsin State Legislature. And so we wanted to take this opportunity today just to ask Brandon a few questions, help our community members get to know you a little bit better. And with that being said, Brandon, welcome.
Thank you.
So the first question I'd like to ask, and it's a good one, what does it mean to you to be a Live Community cyber elite?
I think it's just interaction overall, right? The title doesn't really mean anything realistically, but it's the recognition that people are noticing the amount of time that you put in, and that you're actually helping people, right? Like one of the biggest things is, just knowing that you're actually helping people by answering their questions and participating in the community in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do. We see you a lot on there, and really you're folks that participate as much as you do. It's really helpful for all the community members and come up with solutions and things that they haven't thought about before, right? So it's a really powerful way to help other people too. So that's awesome. Thank you. What was your first experience with Palo Alto Networks products?
So my first experience was actually in 2012 or there around. My uncle owns an IT consultancy, so one of the first experience I had with it was walking into his shop and seeing a USB drive with an ASA configuration sitting alongside a PA 500. Make that work like this. It was the first time that either of us had ever worked with a Palo Alto firewall. And, we had weeks to do the migration. And upon booting up the PA 500, funny enough, I didn't think to access the GUI interface for weeks, just because if you're coming from an ASA, you know that ASDM is terrible. So, I went through and configured this box from CLI and had just started getting into the API by the time I configured it. And, we sit down to review the configuration together, make sure that I'd gotten it all right. And he logs into this GUI. He logs into this interface that I'd never even thought to access before. And you're looking at it and it's like, oh, that's not old. That's not ASDM. That is something that you actually want to be in, So that was my first interaction with it, switching over a old ASA configuration to a PA 500. And yeah, it was legitimately probably about 2 weeks of learning how to configure this thing, configuring it, making the configuration work and match, and testing. And then finding out that there's a user interface on the thing that's actually worth using. Yeah, that was my
kind of found out the hard way, right?
Yeah, let's do all this work manually, the hardest way possible. But that's how we configured ASAs. That was the norm back in the day. And then you find out how wrong that was from a Palo Alto standpoint. Not necessarily wrong, but definitely harder than what it actually needed to be.
Awesome. What motivated you to start engaging in Live Community?
So the initial motivation was actually when I first started here. It was walking into a new environment. It was pretty well open. They had actually just done a migration from an ASA and migrated it to Palo Alto a few years prior. But they had just done a simple migration tool export, right? So initially my interaction with the community was going in and saying, how do I make this configuration that is definitely not how Palo Alto wants you to do things? How do I palletize this, for lack of a better word, and do it properly and use all of the hardware's capability, and at the same time not break anything that's currently going through the box? That was my first interaction with the community. Really was, who has done this? How do I do this? How do I ensure that I'm not going to completely break something? Because being the legislature, we have a lot of interesting statutes, and one of them is that our bills actually have to be accessible. So the last thing you want to do when you're new into an organization is take down anything public facing. So
right.
that was my first interaction. Really, my first big ask is like, how do I do this? How do I not break something going forward?
And do you think that there are things in the community now that really kind of still represent that, and really it's a great tool for people in that scenario that still might be worried that they're not doing it the proper way and they just need some assistance? Do you see those type of questions in community now?
Yeah, we still see those on a regular basis. How definitely when you're moving to a next generation firewall, if you're still using the old layer 4 mindset, you're really not doing it. You're not doing it justice, right? You're not doing the hardware justice. You're not using its capabilities. And that's really where the community can and does come together and provide that insight, right? How do I migrate this rule base that has application any service, HTTP, HTTPS all over? How do I migrate that to App ID? How do I use the capabilities of a full layer 7 firewall? We still see those questions all the time, and that's where the community can really come together and provide insight, and tell you how to do it, because we've already done it. We've already gone through that process. The great thing with layer 7 is pretty much anybody walking in to a layer 7 firewall remembers how that transaction was very different. Going from layer 4 to layer 7 is not the easiest thing. Completely different mindset. But once you take the work to actually do it the right way, use all of the features, that's where you're obviously going to see the most benefit.
Yeah, great. So as the engagement program manager of community, which what I wanted to ask you, what would you say to those people brand new to Palo Alto Networks or brand new to the community about getting engaged and contributing?
That the live community, and any community, is not something that you go to just for answers to your problems, right? That's obviously why a lot of people first interact with the community, right? We're looking for a solution to a problem we have.
Yeah.
But the bigger part of any community, especially live community, is that you can read through all of these different discussions and find different ways to do things, or different features that you've never interacted with. And then your question can resolve around that feature. Just by reading somebody else's post, maybe that's about denial of service profiles. There are plenty of people out there that have never touched or configured a denial of service profile on a Palo Alto device. That's where this community can really come in and actually help you. If you're using the community just to find solutions of problems that you're facing, and you're never going through and reading any other discussion but your own, you're missing out on a lot of that benefit. So keep coming into those discussions, even if you have nothing ever to add. You can be a silent partner in the equation, and just keep reading the discussions. Find those features that you haven't touched, that would be good things to implement in your own environment, or learn about the ways that other people are doing things that maybe don't fit into your environment, but maybe can be something that you use going forward.
Yeah, so it can be a really great way to learn more and kind of and really just engage there in a different way.
It's a great way just to learn the entire feature set of a product. You might not be using one of the features, and just reading a discussion about that feature set is a great way to maybe jog your mind, or to even point out that that feature exists, and could be something that you utilize going forward.
Excellent. That's great. I think that'll help our community members just to be able to know, it's okay to engage. We want you to engage. We want you, ask your questions, take a look around, get familiar, be in there consistently, right? To really learn, and, contribute as well.
Right. We see a lot, right? Like where somebody will post something and it's like, oh, maybe this is a stupid question. And
right.
There really is no stupid questions, right? Even if it's a really simple question, it's a really simple question to answer. So, those ones are sometimes the easiest ones to answer, and they just, you help somebody, but also, hey, that was, it took 5 seconds to answer you. It took you a few minutes, a few hours maybe, to get the answer to what you were asking.
Well, it's so much easier than to pick up the phone in so many ways, where you can just go to community and get your answers, or help other people find solutions in a very fast, easy scenario, sometimes, right?
Well, you can run them side by side too, which I think is what, like, sometimes people don't think about it, right?
Right.
There are certainly situations where, regardless of what you post on the community, we might tell you to go to TAC, right? Those guys are great, and they have the tools and the ability to really analyze your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so if you're posting on the live community, I have this problem with a service, and I had the data plane lockup. There's so many logs that can't really tell you what happened there. Right. TAC can, because they have access to all those logs. But rather than just opening a TAC case, if you open a TAC case and you ask the community, that can all of a sudden go into, here's some things that you can do while you're waiting for TAC. So it can go hand in hand. It's not just ask the community. If the community can solve your problem without contacting TAC, I think everybody agrees that that's probably faster, less effort on your part, certainly. But it also can be just an additional layer to TAC. You get the basic outlay of what you're trying to do, and then engage TAC for farther analysis, or help actually implementing the feature that we're talking about on the community, because the community can do a lot of things, but we can't really spend the time to completely walk you through the process. We can provide the documentation, but that's really where it can go hand in hand. You can do both at the same time. It's not a one or the other. It can certainly get you to your resolution faster. Even if it's just, I opened a TAC case and I've already checked these things that the live community said was problematic, like check these logs. It can just, in general, help you to get to the resolution faster. So
that makes sense. Okay, so one of the things that I think that the community would like to know, their members would like to know, is just if you could tell us a little bit about your typical workday. What do you do? What are some of the daily routines that you do?
So right now, especially with everybody being remote, the security side and pretty much every organization I think has gone, higher in mindset. Verifying that somebody logging in remotely is who they say they are is a huge process. So there's certainly a lot of log review, a lot of just changes that you need to make as the day goes on. My average day really is log review, meetings, and changes, whether that be adding a new denial of service protection profile and having to put DOS on a new service that's been spun up, or just as simply creating new security rules from an internal service that got set up and now you're building rules. And then a lot of log review, a lot of making sure that the alerts that we're getting are not actually somebody doing something else. So.
And what do you like to do in your free time, Brandon, when you're not working?
So in my free time, I spend a lot of time outside, going on walks, hiking through our state parks, stuff like that. Another thing that I really like to do is flying. I have my private pilot's license. So if it's a good weekend and it's not incredibly windy or anything like that, generally I'll be able to, get up for a few hours. There's really nothing better than actually looking out, which is really easy to do at 4,000 feet. You can see a lot of land, a lot of landscape very, very quickly. But yeah, those two things are primarily what I like to do in my free time, is just get outside, interact with just be outside, really.
Excellent. And so to wrap up our conversation today, I'd like to ask a final question. What is your community superpower?
So the community superpower, I wouldn't say that I really have a superpower, right? But if there's one thing that I would tell anybody to do, whether it's in the community or anywhere else, is it's really listening to everybody's take. There's a lot of different ways that we can do things. There's a lot of different features and capabilities on the firewall, and your environment might not have all of them. There's plenty of environments out there where you're not using Panorama, for instance, because you just don't have enough firewalls. But that doesn't mean that Panorama discussions can't teach you something. You might be listening to a discussion or following along to a discussion, I guess, rather than listening. But you might be following a discussion where people are talking about a feature that you've never used. And it's obviously great to use all of the capabilities of the hardware that your organization, your company has already purchased. There's other times where you're just doing things differently than what other people would do, right? And sometimes we like to think that our way is the best way, but sometimes you're just wrong. And there's other ways to do things. You can do things better or maybe more efficiently than the way that you're currently doing things. So that would be the superpower, so to speak, that I would recommend everybody follow, is just be willing to listen to all of these discussions and take things away from them, and don't get stuck into the mindset that the way that you're doing things is the only way or the best way. Go follow these discussions and you'll learn different ways of doing things, different processes. And if you can take those back to your organization or learn about features that you're maybe not using now, but would maybe be good to implement, that's always better. Don't just get stuck in your way of doing things. Other people may have found a better way of doing what you're trying to accomplish.
That's really great advice. That's great advice. Well, thank you, Brandon. It was really nice chatting with you today. I know our live community members will really enjoy getting to know you a little bit better. And again, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you.